Well, it's time to be here at the Parts View Workbench. You know what, Dave? And every week we're going to be talking about rigs and techniques. And this week you decided you want to touch on a little bass.
Well, you know, this is the best time to be bass fishing in Texas. It's springtime. Once that water hits 65 degrees, the bass start to go on the spawn. They're all, as big as the state is, they're on all stages of the spawn throughout the state. A cold front can come through and knock them off, and then they'll come back on. So right now, all the fish are, at some point in the spawn. They're either pre-spawn, spawning, or post-spawn right now. So, and there's just tons of them. And this is the time to catch the big fish too. The Texas Lunker Program, this is when they really start pouring out some great big fish, 12, 13 pounders. They're just catching them all the time. So, when we're going to be out there throwing at these bass on the beds, they're going to be very aggressive. The males are going to be up in the shallow water mostly. The female, she might be up in there too, but she doesn't spend a whole lot of time. She gets up there, gets her thing done, and usually skedaddles. So, but she's going to be, either in that deeper water that leads up to those spawning areas. That's where you're going to probably find her most of the time. Sometimes you'll see her sitting on the bed, but mostly the little male is the one that's up there on the bed. Once she lays those eggs, he's up there guarding them. So anything that comes through there, he's going to pounce on. He's very aggressive at that period of time. The females are wanting to bulk up if they're pre-spawn, and after they spawn, because they don't eat for a little while, then they're hungry again. So the bass are hungry, and if you're out there, just about anything you throw at them is going to catch them. Now that creature bait there is a great bait to throw. With a big bait like that, it's good to use one of those extra wide gap hooks, because you got so much, profile and meat in between the fish and the hook point. So that extra wide gap really helps you out whenever you're going to be using a big bait like that.
This is the Trocar?
Yes, sir. That's the EYG. And if you're going to be using some of the trick worms and stuff, like the tap out worm, you might want to cut that tail off and make it even 6 inches. Make it a little smaller. And it's just a trick worm is just a straight worm with no
So
real
would you
action
cut it
to
off here, or are you going to cut off in the front? Which way do you prefer
I would probably,
to shorten it?
I would probably take this part off just so I have enough meat for my hook to go in.
Right.
If you start getting into this real shallow, a real narrow part.
This is a different hook than the...
Yeah, but you can get away with just using the Pro V worm hooks, like a 4/0 or a round bend like this one is, because it's a smaller profile bait. So you don't really have to have that extra wide gap area. This is more streamlined, and you can still get a hook in the fish. It's the same way if I'm going to be throwing one of those lizards. Boy, the bass on the bed really hate a lizard, because they think it's a salamander or something, and they are notorious for eating bass eggs. So they really hate a lizard this time of year. If you don't throw a lizard any other time, now is the time when those fish are up in that shallow water, 5 feet or less. That lizard gets a lot of attention, and they really hate it. They really hate them. And they were talking about using a slobber knocker in a shad color right now. Mm-hmm. That one would be great, either with a trailer on it or without a trailer. Those slobber knockers work really well.
I like it.
Yeah, they work really well. And I like to throw a wacky worm, and this is one I've cut. It's just a tap out that I've cut off, and I like to use that little tiny larva jig. It's a little tiny hook, but it's really strong. So even if you hook a great big fish on that hook, it's not going to pull out, especially with the drag that we're using. And you can throw that a little further with the weights, and you can adjust the weights. They make them up to a 1/4 ounce, so you can throw that little tiny hook a long ways. And we want to stay off them a little bit when they're up in that shallow water. They get pretty skittish, So the further we can stay back and cast past the bedding area, and then bring the bait, whatever we're using, across the bed to them, it'll work a lot better. The spinner baits work really good right now, just because They make a lot of noise and get a lot of attention.
And what's the rod for, Dave?
Well, this is a heavy inshore rod. This is the elite inshore fishing rod from Fenwick. It's got a 30-60 ton graphite blend in it. It's a heavier rod, and when we're catching these big fish in that shallow water, we need to get them up and out of the cover and whatnot. So this is a great rod to do it with. It's got heavy-duty titanium guides, custom reel seat. It's very strong, but still sensitive.
Right.
You know, Fenwick makes really strong and sensitive rods, and this is perfect for when the bass are up in that real shallow water and you want to move them out of cover, because that's where they'll be. You know, they'll be around some sort of cover. So
I got you.
we
Why
wanna
a
get 'em out.
spinning rod over a bait caster?
Well, you could use either one.
It's forgiving.
It is a little more forgiving, but you know, in
And
Texas, some
when
guys
it's
like
blowing
it.
40, that's why you're using a
That's
spinning
true.
rod.
That's true. You can throw lighter baits as well with a spinning
Exactly,
rod.
exactly, on that little larva jig,
Didn't
right?
miss a beat, gentlemen.